people. There we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the February webinar for the STC. This is Danielle Villegas, the acting president of the chapter. And tonight we're going to be hearing from Rob Sims, who's going to be giving us a webinar on embedding performance support tools within help architecture, which sounds really complicated, but I think I got a preview of this on Monday, and I think Rob's going to enlighten us with a lot of really cool tools and things that he's experienced, kind of creating a case study to be able to give us some more insight into this. But before we get started, I just wanted to kind of give a few plugs here. Hold on. There we go. Upcoming events, something that's coming up this spring is chapter elections, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more. We are looking for candidates for next year. We are also working on the Donda Board Scholarship and Student Membership Drive, and we'll have some announcements about that very soon. So if you do have any questions or about that, let us know, and we'll have that out soon. If you are not a member of the STC, I encourage you to join. Don't forget to join the Metro chapter. I think everybody who's on this call already is a member, so I don't think I don't have to do a big pitch on that. But as I said, we do need you. We are looking for volunteers to help rebuild our chapter and run the chapter. Primarily, we have positions available for president and treasurer secretary. We also, if you don't want to be at the top there, we are always looking for people to help us out with programming, that's setting up webinars and events, membership, just doing the outreach to get more members, and communications, just putting out our newsletter, maintaining our website, things like that. So if you are interested, please contact, I guess it's me for now, at president@stc.org. And I think that's my only little pitch. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to hello, there's everybody. I'm going to just turn this over to Rob, who is going to present.
Check the chat. Somebody asked a question.
Chat, here you go. Yes, you will be receiving, we will be posting the recording. That is no problem. I couldn't see the chat before, so no problem.
And Danielle, would you let me share? I think there's a
sure. I gotta find
the power of the power of sharing in Zoom. I've learned this the hard way.
You were doing this the other night.
Yeah, it's buried.
It's buried. Oh, don't tell me that now. Let me pause the recording for a second. Okay, we're back. That was quick. So you should be able to do it now.
And it was very easy.
If not, tell me.
Nope,
there
I got
we go.
it. Yeah, perfect.
All right. Awesome.
Well, thanks, Danielle. And thanks, everyone. And thank you to STC and everybody for joining. And I find this this topic really interesting, and it's really helped me actually in the last 3 years that I've been with GS1 US to bring about some real change to the organization and the way we manage members and we educate members. I always like to start with a joke. I got this great book of dad jokes, and the joke is I love watching my kids groan when I tell a dad joke. And the joke was I told my wife last night that I dreamt, I had this fear, I should say, of getting stuck in a revolving door, and it scares me. And she just tells me, don't worry, eventually you'll come around. And yes, thank you so much. And what I think is funny about that, sorry, it's in this dad joke. But what's funny about that joke is eventually I came around. I was a tech writer for a long time. Then I became a marketing education writer, and I learned a lot from that piece of it. And then I returned to pure technical documentation in 2017. So it's a very interesting world that I've been able to use some of that marketing data and user experience in the current role, which is really kind of interesting. So why don't I just get into the slides here. I'll just move them down here. Again, because I'm part of GS1 US, no one can talk about pricing or marketing or product plans. I don't think that's going to happen here tonight, but I just want to mention that. There's also some legal disclosure because I'm part of GS1 US. I make no representation about anything that I talk about. And then I'll just talk really quick about the agenda. And this is next half hour, just talking about what our help center challenge and our documentation needs were, why performance support tools were chosen as part of the mix of this help center environment that we have in architecture, and then really how that's really improved the way we collect data about our users and then build better content because of it. And I really think that's part of this solution that's really been important. And finally, just a performance support checklist. Your company may not have a performance support tool. They're now called digital adoption platforms, or DApps, which is very interesting. A lot of IT analysts call them DApps, and we'll digital adoption, but I go back and forth on that. So we'll have a checklist for that. And then just quickly, just GS1 is a non-profit neutral organization. That's where we're behind the barcode, the UPCA barcode. We help companies of all sizes manage their product data and identification, location identification. As you see, GS1 US here in New Jersey, actually is based in New Jersey. We actually have databases that you can see on the right there, 30 million GTINs, or global trade item numbers, across many businesses. It's a fascinating organization with lots of knowledgeable people. It's actually pretty intimidating sometimes to talk to all the folks that have been in industry and now they're working for this organization to help really improve supply chain efficiencies, help with all kinds of things. Sustainability is a big topic now, through the process of product identification. Data Hub is the tool that I support and my team. I actually have, there's a team of, I have a manager, I have a director. I'm the sole technical writer, but we really have a good knowledgeable team. And we manage it. Data Hub actually has 3 elements on the right there. You can see it's really product, location, and company, with all those different identifiers, all these different organizations coming in and using our tools to identify their products, different locations, and of course their company. Our challenge was that in 2020, only 14% of all these users, there's about 40,000 users a month, were visiting the help center for documentation, to watch videos. It was very low. And that really helped fuel the problem, the business challenge, which was a lot of folks were calling our customer service desk. We call it member support because we really have members, not customers, but there was a lot of inquiries a month, about 7,000 a month. And a lot of those, almost 40%, were related to the tools, including the tool that I create all the documentation for. So we had a goal. Let's reduce those inquiries and actually get people to self-educate on those low-level base L1 questions. You know, there's so many, they have so many of those. How do I get started, or how do I get my barcode? We have different services, and they had very basic questions. We could just address those and anticipate the question and deliver an answer in one easy click. We think we could actually increase that self-education number by 3%, a whopping 3%, but it would actually have dropped that number a lot if we were successful. And before I get into it, I found this paper, and I just found this really interesting because when you talk to consumers about what is the key to easier help, the number one answer there is easy to find help on the website or app. And I always found that kind of fascinating. Again, coming around as my revolving door joke, that was a challenge for marketing too. How do I make my marketing content easy to find? And it's the same challenge when you talk about the customer service digital experience. Just make it easy to find. And that seems so simplistic, but that really is the challenge. That was the challenge for us as well. Make the answers easy to find. And with performance support, what I found interesting is that the marketing group at GS1 US chose this tool, and again, they call it digital adoption platform. So I'll go back and forth on that, but all they really do is deliver an answer at the point of need inside the application. So our Data Hub product that I mentioned a few times is a web-based application. You log in, you're in, and when they're working in this system, they have a lot of questions. But what digital adoption does is interact with the user right within the application itself. And it really focuses on my second bullet point there on grab and go. There's a specific question they have. We're not going to give them a user guide. I have user guides. We have 30, 40-page user guides. We're not going to do a linear education. It's going to be an instant answer, and I'll show a couple examples. But what's really important is this third bullet point, which is it answers that quick question for them, but it can also serve as a launching pad and a learning path that can drive them to deeper knowledge and better engagement and a better understanding of the whole process and why they're even here to record their products and get these barcodes. And of course, as you see in the green, it's really about collecting that user behavior data, which is really driving us to do better content and better help all across the board in all different formats. So really a digital adoption platform really just walks through the functionality with the user as they interact with the application. So if anybody is working on web-based applications, I'm sure a few of you are, then you understand that when you're in a web-based application, you can have this layer on top of that that provides help balloons or steps to walk them through. And in those steps, you can actually provide links to online articles and deeper learning, as I mentioned earlier. And what really the digital adoption platform does is anticipate questions. So you can actually anticipate an issue that comes up. And a great example is this. And this is an actual example from our software. A lot of folks, we had a checkbox. You can see above that box with the text in it, there's a little checkbox, and people were accidentally checking this box that said, is this item variable measure? Because they thought their products were varied. They had varied t-shirts and varied candles or mugs or jars of jam, as we use as example all the time. But really, that's a totally different term that's very specific to GS1 and our world. And so beyond the fact that we have to put that on there because we're a standards body and that is a standards terminology, we were having a lot of folks click on that accidentally. And so this tip really just overlays on the software itself, and it only overlays if you mouse over that box. You don't have to check the box. It's just telling you, whoa, 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 are you really sure your product is a variable measure? So it actually anticipates what the user is thinking they're doing, because their user action is hovering over a very important field that if they check, will actually create some problems for them later. So that's just an example of how one of the tools that digital adoption can provide. We use the tool WalkMe, and it provides a couple different tools, like all of them do. As a matter of fact, I put the top brands down here. You'll see Coachwear, Kineo, Intuitive, User IQ, WalkMe, and WhatFix. I think they're the top 6. And again, they're embedded in the web-based application. It can also be used in installed applications as well. And there's a yearly subscription, which we pay. I think we actually do a 3-year contract. And I think the most important bullet of this whole presentation is that 4th one, which is that they supplement training and help content. They don't replace it. I think there was a concern when I first came in, and I know I've talked to other tech writers, that somehow these digital adoption platforms are going to eliminate the need for some of the other repositories, the documentation, with other materials, and they really don't. As a matter of fact, they really should be doing the opposite. They should be driving people to it, and they should really driving users to that targeted help content, whether it's a PDF or a video or a product demonstration, what have you. And that's why marketing it purchased it initially, was to drive them to paid content and some of the marketing campaigns. In fact, technical writers need to take ownership of these links as well, because it actually can provide links to their very own content. And like a good, I guess, like a good marketing person here, it looks like there's 3 different types of people that come into our software and then potentially our help. And I love breaking these up, because there's clearly, there might be 4 actually, but these are the top 3. There's that person who just jumps right into an application. I was on a webinar with, I think it might have been the STC, might have been an STC call, but it was with HR Block, their technical writer team. And they have a lot of folks in the tax software that just jump right into tax software. That's definitely true of our world as well. I'm not going to do any education on my own. I'm just going to jump right in and figure it out. Then there's that person that tries the online help a little bit. They try to do some upfront, and then they actually call customer service, and they're educated. They at least have a certain amount of education, but they've given that a shot. And then there's that person who just gets very intimidated and just calls our customer service hotline, because they don't even want to bother. And then you'll see, we track all of our calls. You'll see that people just get a complete introduction to our software. What I find interesting in the little green sun there is how the user interacts with the content, I think, is as critical as the content itself. And if we could just get the first 2 folks, but I think that 3rd person might call anyway, but if we could just get the first and second person to interact a little bit more with the software in a user-friendly way, then they'll get the results they want, and they won't have to contact the member support or customer service desk because they've gotten through the process. And we may even make them happy enough where they're engaged and happy and want to do business with us and talk nice about us to other folks, which is very important to us. So this is all part of what the technical writer was given when when I started in 2019, and then through 2020, and then of course in 2021, all this became bubbled up and became successful. What I learned really quickly is, and when I was in marketing, I had a technical writer that worked with me, and I learned a lot from that person. But even at GS1 US, which is has a good culture, is technical communications really is that bridge to these four groups. And for consistency of message with product management that has certain user expectations, they know the functionality, to work with marketing who really doesn't really understand the software. In fact, they don't want to. Their job is to promote many programs and the organization itself. Working with customer service, which has the product knowledge, but maybe not the messaging consistency. And then, of course, software development, which they interpret product management. Typically, they don't have the greatest communication or messaging skills, and that's not their focus, and they would admit to that. And I think that's where technical writers, that's what I've been able to do, is work well with these four groups to the point where I'm actually sharing best practices with them. I'm helping the organization fulfill its mission, and driving up the use of the product and the value of the product, and making all, sort of raising all the levels of quality for all four groups. I'm just going to stop real quick for any questions or any comments before we. Anybody want to jump off mute and ask or put something in the chat?
No questions or comments, but I'm loving this.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Lori.
Yeah,
glad
so
to hear
far so
that.
good.
If I didn't live it for 2 years, I think it would be harder to present. But every day, it's just been a real interesting experience, and fortunately, the organization has given me the power and the knowledge and the tools to make this work. And really, one of the biggest things that I had to do was, one, I had to learn the software, but I had to learn the user experiences and all the different paths that they take. And a lot of users through our data collection, through member support calls, I really learned that there's a lot of obstacles, that there's so many different, you think about all the industries, you think about apparel and healthcare, and you think about, of course, consumer goods, and through the last 2 years, we've really seen a lot of small companies just pop up. Really, just folks want to finally take on that product idea they had and make that popcorn. I think popcorn was a big one. We saw a lot of popcorn makers, but just you see all these different products emerge, and it's really exciting to be part of that and make sure they get it done efficiently and make sure they're able to work with trading partners and retailers. But these challenges were the big ones. What steps do I need to take to get my product, to get a barcode, to understand what a GTIN is, to get it on an online reseller or get it in with a retailer? Where's the data that I need to enter this and get this done? They're getting errors. Why am I getting? I don't understand the system error. What does this error mean? The error is telling me something. I'm not 100% sure I know how to fulfill that error and get past that error. And a lot of folks, as I said earlier, just want to get started. They're just completely intimidated by the whole process, and they don't really know how to start. So where do I get all that data? Well, these are the big five, I call them. CRM, customer support calls, so people calling in obviously is number one. But you'd be surprised. Online help, we'll talk about this in the performance support tool or the digital adoption platform, but online help searching is something that I can really rely on, because those people who do want to self-educate are typing in search terms if they don't find what they want. And you start to see patterns emerge from search terms, which is really fascinating. And I think I have a screen example in a couple seconds here. But the other thing that we do is, I do this very informally, and I should probably do this a little better. I'm not the best at this, but just surveying our customer service and product management teams. The product management teams are overseeing the Data Hub product. they're also getting a lot of intelligence through our customer service, but sometimes just through individuals who are coming to them from the organization that are maybe hearing from customers. We started using heat maps to observe user behavior, so it's crazy. It's actually somewhat, it gets kind of emotional to watch someone who maybe has a rage click, or someone who's constantly clicking on something and they don't realize the button just 3 inches from where they're clicking is the way to move forward, but they're missing it. So our developers use that for UI, user experience UI. Our UI expert is brilliant, and they study this all the time to see where exactly is this anger or sometimes the frustration coming from, and trying to solve that. And it happens once in a while. And then of course there's help platform analytics. So, as people use our help center, I'm getting all the data from that as well. A lot of good data, and synthesizing all that can be really hard to come up with tech writers. It's new for me. It was something I did on the marketing side, but to look at all this from a technical writing and content perspective is actually kind of an interesting challenge. It's probably a whole other session we could talk about. But what's really helping me is the digital adoption platform itself. It'll tell me how many folks are taking a guided tour. Where are the users stopping and asking for help? How many users are entering a field in error? They can actually tell me how many folks clicked on that variable measure box. They're telling me how many folks are looking at that error message. How many users are skipping a specific field? And I'll show you that example in a second. So there's a lot of data being collected by these performance support tools that can help drive other content within the help center, within your documentation, and also even I have help bubbles as well that I could use. And of course, I mentioned earlier that if we have a little menu bar and a little menu in on the side of the screen, and they can type in a search term, and we get about 400 of those a month. So they're also helping me drive up and surface content, because I would never in a million years. I think Danielle had a good line last year. This is where I was going to. You think you know what your user wants, but you really don't. The data will tell you what the user is looking for, and so I was shocked, and I think I could even zoom in on this if I'm so bold. You could see I'm never going to get zoomed in enough, but the #1 search term was delete. How did they delete a product? So I just introduced my strawberry jam. It didn't do well. I want to delete that product. I don't want to make it anymore. I want to get it off. Well, that's a step that people were looking for. That was the #1 thing people were searching for. So seeing that data caused me to write a better delete article that's in the help center right now. This is another similar to that variable measure one I was talking about earlier. Well, actually, I'll get that in a second. Let me start with the smart walkthrough. Actually, this is the key thing that a digital adoption platform does. The purple button is called, in the WalkMe world, it's called a launcher, and it allows you to set up steps. So if a user is overwhelmed and confused, they see a box that says, help me create a barcode, they'll click it, and it will actually step-by-step walk through all the fields that are required. And I can build that in a very easy user interface that allows me to build steps. All the digital adoption platforms have this ability to build those steps, to make them required. They have to enter something or optional. And so really what it does is provide recommendations. It spans the several screens, because the process takes a few different screens. And within that process, I can put links to the help center, because I only really want to put maybe 15 to 20 words maximum in each step. But some of those steps, they may have deeper questions or want to go a little further, and I can put links and drive them into the help center and to my PDF user guides to get more answers. As I mentioned about the variable measure, I wanted to talk about the smart tip. This is one that's very interesting. Again, a user, this actually could be fixed by the application development team at some point in the future, and probably will because of this smart tip, because they didn't really think that many users were experiencing this. But our customer service team did say this was an issue. And so what we did was we actually, we actually added a smart tip when a user enters a case of the jam. They have, like, say 20 jars in a jam. The default is #1. They have to change that 1 to 20. They ship to the supermarket 20 jars in a case. Well, if they leave the default one and then they assign and they go through and get a barcode, they can't go back and fix that because that's fixed. That's the way standards work. And that was frustrating a few of our users. So we actually put a tip that actually hovers over, and I actually have it broken down here. We actually, if you look at the solution there, it only hovers if the user is about to click on a sign button, which is a very important step, but they forgot to change the 1 to a 20 or it's not whatever the quantity is. And what this has done is actually reduce our quantity mistakes to our member support or customer service team by a pretty good percentage there. And more importantly, I'm collecting data now that tells me that X number of users are experiencing this, and this now is something that's bubbling up to make it a product match. They probably have 300 changes they could make, but this data now supports the fact that maybe this is a top 10 issue that maybe they could look at in the future. So I love the fact that not only am I fixing the user experience, but I'm actually fueling some potential product development changes, which product development really appreciates. So it helps my relationship with them, and it's really quantifiable. It's pure data. The data is being driven by the digital adoption platform. I want to talk about writing because I haven't really talked about writing too much, and I am a technical writer. I know it sounds like I might be an IT or or some sort of digital adoption evangelist. I'm not really evangelical about this, except the fact that I know it works within the help information architecture that GS1 US has. But really, you have to really adopt a UX mindset. And I've taken some UX courses over the last few years, and there's really that whole micro copy concept. You really have to be really fast. I mean, the user experience is, I'm getting a grab and go answer. So I can't, and this is hard for me because I've written 500-page user guides, but it really have to focus on one very singular concept. And so because the user demands that transactional experience, if I provide more than just that single tip, I could see I'm losing the user. And what I can do though is, as I said 100 times here, is I can surface a link or put a link out to online help or some micro learning that they can then go to a level 2. But it's always about L1. And actually, the digital adoption platform, they all know this. I know WalkMe. This is a WalkMe, I guess, example of how to make buttons, more descriptive and amplify the value proceedings, but convey value infrequently. And then you can see how much better they, are you sure you want to cancel? And then of course it says cancel, and then it's just no. Are you sure you want to cancel? And then explaining the button, yes, cancel the form. That's kind of a UX thing, just to be more explanatory. But also, it actually, I think about that a lot when I'm writing a 10-word tip. How much can you squeeze into 10, 15 words before you have to drive somebody out to get more answers? It's actually been a great writing exercise for me to work in a digital adoption platform, because it does focus on microcopy. This is a great example of one, and I wish I could zoom in a little bit here. I probably, well, no, let's just go for it here. But in this one, this is a step where you're walking. This is actually a help bubble, excuse me. And this is an example of providing three lines, and then providing a path or if they want to learn more. So in the first 3 lines, this is where we're defining a very specific terminology for the business in terms of what do you actually want to build. Is your product a specific item, each item, or is it a case, or is it a pallet, or is it some sort of other packaging type that we have? And they don't know these packaging types. So they get a pull down of these 7 or 8 packaging types, and they don't know. And so what we do is we drive them over to a Help Center article. And because of this Help Center article now is one of our top 3 or 4 every month, because it allows a new user to come in and quickly identify what's a jar jam versus what's an intermediate pack that I sell at a retailer versus how do I pack these jam? If I pack these jars of jam, as I said, 20 in a case, What should I use for that? What if I have two different types of jams? I have blueberry and strawberry, and I need to mix those into a single case because that's how my retailer likes it. Well, that is a different type of case than a regular case. And so all those definitions are spelled out in this learning path that we provide. And it all starts with a single help bubble and a link in that help bubble. So it's really forced me to be very concise and then drive them out to a learning path where they get more. And this is again outside of the digital adoption platform, but this is very typical of what I've done inside all the smart tips and even in the digital adoption platform walk me that I showed you earlier, the walkthrough. There's something else that's really important, and this is one of my last, I think, big slides, is one thing that we tried to do is, because of the digital adoption platform and these overlays, we've also realized in 2021 that we could surface really important help content in the Help Center, which is HTML-based product. It's just a web-based product that has obviously has PDF guides in there, but it also has HTML articles. We could just surface those up sooner in the user experience, back to that easier to find survey or paper that I showed earlier, then we would get a lot more traffic. And so what we did was we worked with our marketing team. On the front page of our tool, we actually surfaced two of the most important articles about how to get the barcode and how to start the process, so that we're guiding the user right away, in addition to the digital adoption platform, which is on the next page here. And those links, by the way, when we launched those in May, this is just Google Analytics, which we use, from January to April, that we didn't have those links. We averaged about 800 visits to those articles, to the single article, how to create a product. And then from May to December, the numbers went up to almost 6,000. So what we learned is, I always think this is like Wawa versus Giant. I love both. But a lot of folks, when they want their coffee, will go to Wawa instead of walking to the corner of the Giant supermarket. And that's sort of what we did here. We and sorry for all the Philly references, but we are the Philadelphia chapter, so I think it's okay. But the reality is that Wawa coffee is convenient and fast, and it's frictionless. And so was putting a link that normally that go to the Help Center and find in about 3 clicks, making it 1 click away on the front page. It sounds like a no-brainer, and probably should have done it from the beginning, but at the same time, it made us realize that the user experience is, I want it now. I'm antsy. I want to get in and find I have to get moving here. Like, I really want to get started. I want to, back to my scenario, a lot of folks just want to dive in and try the application. And so again, as you start to look at your own users, it's something to think about if you're seeing a lot of users who are not willing to stroll through the Help Center or the Giant, in my analogy. I'll just let that analogy go. Okay. And then I think the last piece of this is really about business case and why, someone made a really strong case before I got there for a digital adoption platform. And how, again, back to this idea that technical communication is sort of that bridge, or the conduit really between these 4 groups, is when there was a business need that we need to reduce data errors that users are making in the application. We need to improve user engagement or loyalty. We need users to be happy so they come back and that they want to talk about us and they continue to grow their business with us. And then really more efficient time spent in the application as well, not looking around, looking for a Help Center article or trying to figure something out. We can see in the heat maps that again, sometimes a user could spend 25 minutes, 30 minutes just trying to add a single product. And then finally, the big one really, which is reducing inquiries to our customer support. First of all, level 1 calls, those base calls, they are time consuming. They're walking through a product, which is 15, 20 minutes. There are lots and lots of calls that are L2, level 2, and more, much more intense. And our member support team is extremely knowledgeable, and they're looking at spending a lot of time on these base calls, answering these base questions and driving them through basic tours. That's a big cost initiative, and it's also, I don't want to burn any. I love those folks; they're amazing, and you don't want to burn anybody out having to answer the same basic call every time. So, with that said, these are the questions that I think companies should ask, before they even think about a web-based or even a software-based digital adoption platform. What are the user's main goals? Why can't they reach those goals? How can we provide a better user experience that increases engagement? If you're using something like Net Promoter Score, which we use, or some other technique, maybe even marketing has to identify level of engagement or relationship. What are the most commonly asked questions that users have while using the application? If you've got to see a pattern there and they're basic questions, I think you're going to find that a performance support tool might be the way to go. Here's a big one. How many clicks were taken by the user to answer the question they had? Maybe using heat maps or think alouds where you watch. Boy, if you see a user like we see in the heat maps, 1 out of 8, 1 out of 9 users really struggles to get started, that's a pretty good reason to maybe consider a performance support tool or some sort of experience in the front end that allows a user to get their bearings and get familiar with the application really fast. How many users were lost or disoriented by the help center navigation? That was an old experience that I had in another organization. Fortunately, that hasn't happened here, but that definitely, I thought about my past lives when I started here, and we had a help center that just a bunch of job aids. I won't name the company, but those job aids were hard to find. They just weren't very well structured in terms of the overall appearance. Actually, an overlay like the performance support tool would have solved a lot of that challenge that we had in the past in another life. Do we need a multi-tier environment for those users who want to continue their education? Again, that idea of learning paths. And we have users who just want to grab and go, but we also have users who want to understand all this. This is really important part of their growth as a company, to consolidate and standardize the way they ship product, the way they deal with retailers. So they want to grow. And so we don't want to cut them off or impede that path. Are users asking questions that the help center doesn't provide? I think that, like I just told you about the delete issue, that was amazing to me. That was a learning, definitely something that came from the searches. How can we best manage and reuse our content and content objects? So this, I'm not a DITA or DITA, I guess, depending on what side you're on, but we might be moving that way, and we don't have a lot of reusable objects, but I think with the digital adoption platform, you see opportunities to take help center content and move it into other areas. How can we ensure that content is accurate and answers to users' questions precisely? Again, that's the very basis of why I love being a technical writer. I actually, believe it or not, like I said, I love writing more than I love organizing content and help information architecture. But if one hand washes the other, and I'm gonna learn it, and I'm gonna be good at it if I have to be. And certainly the digital adoption platform helps do that. And then, will users gain value from visuals in the help center and documentation? I think that's also sort of that's maybe less important to the digital adoption platform, but certainly valuable in terms of shaping user experience within the software, showing buttons, visualizing the experience. We do a lot of that inside the help center, and that's helped a lot. So just to summarize, I came up with this thing. I told Danielle it wasn't really lead at first, but then I made it lead just because I changed a couple words. But really, it's just, leveraging that valuable data, finding in the digital adoption platform will let you leverage all that data that it pulls in for you. It actually builds you a story sometimes. Embed those tools within applications to sort of serve as the grab and go, but also add relevant links and drive them to the knowledge base, to your user guides, their videos, increase the usage of all your help content. And finally, that really starts with a measurable business case. If you define that measurable business case, whether it be improved engagement or reducing support calls or increasing loyalty, or even driving sales, which may not happen as much as GS1 US because we're we're not for profit and we're a neutral company, but we do have a marketing team. But I could see in other areas I've been where I think this education would have been a really good tool for the sales team to drive them to build better relationships with our existing customers and grow that customer base. Certainly a very important part of that experience in other organizations. So I hope I've given you some things to think about. I wanted to get done by 7:45. Oof, just ran right up into it.
Perfect.
Yeah, look at that. But I do want to, any questions or anything, please let me know. And here's my email for my work email, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And I want to, again, just want to say thank you to Danielle and Steve and Lori, to the whole team at STC for letting me do this. I know I've been a off and on member over the last 20 years, but this was a really important to me, and I hope it helps some folks think about a little bit differently about how these tools can be integrated into a help architecture. So thank you again for letting me present today or tonight.
You're welcome. You're absolutely welcome. And, I know that for me personally, I found that there was a lot of things that I could relate to. I mean, even as Rob said, he and I were talking about some of this on Monday because we were kind of doing a little dress rehearsal. And one of the things as a content strategist that I often would ask clients was like, what are your stats? Where are people hitting? And
Right.
what he mentioned before, the idea of, you think you know what your customers want, but they don't. They'll actually tell you. And sometimes it's through those heat maps, or just even through Google Analytics. Where did they go first? How long did they stay there? Things like that. And I think, to quote Rob, the numbers don't lie. They tell you for sure. And it can change the way you think about things. So I thought it was validating for me as well, from my own experiences. So does anyone else have any questions or things to share where they felt that this kind of connected with something that they've done?
Well, I'm very interested in this because we are just converting from just PDFs of everything, and some of them are like 1,000 pages long. Nobody's going to read through all that. Luckily, I work on connectors, so my stuff is usually less than 100. But I like and now we're just converting to something called Zoom In, which creates knowledge articles. And we actually have one writer who is within the customer service group and is starting to write short knowledge articles to answer the questions that are coming in there. So I think we're just getting into this.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's true. Because go ahead, Rob.
I was going to say, I have a few customer service folks. I call them secret weapons because they are pretty good writers. Again, I think there's a consistency thing that they might be missing, and that would be, Lori, where I think you probably can help this person. But at the same time, the knowledge is off the charts, and they experience, when they see patterns, those patterns bubble up, and I trust them.
That's why we got that one technical writer into that group.
Yeah, so, that's amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. If GS1 US took a member support person and paired them with me, that would be a very powerful thing. They're just so busy. Yeah. But you're right. That's a very cool that your company's doing that. I think is really impressive.
I think even what I was going to just say is I think a lot more companies are starting to do that. What I'm doing right now is just that is, it's a team of technical writers who are writing knowledge articles for self-service. In our case, it's ServiceNow. It's a different tool. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that we work specifically with HR content. So it's like, what are my what are my benefits? How much time do I have off? How do I figure that out? I have to go on short-term disability. How do I do that? I just got married. How do I change my benefits for that? Or, just different life events, different anything you can think of related to HR. That's what we do. So, we're just starting to dabble into some of this stuff with the analytics. One of the things you mentioned was heat maps, and that's really has to do with UX research. Really is that's just a basic one, having taken courses too, like you said, on UX. And sometimes it's just sitting in front of a camera like this, or having a camera and recording people's reactions as they walk through and say, this is where I'm going, I'm confused about this, and that sort of thing. I mean, there's ways to do those kinds of studies, and sometimes people don't think they're helpful, but they really are. So, what you're showing is that, yeah, when you take the time to do that sort of thing and look at the numbers, it can have a big impact.
Yeah, when you combine the heat map with the search data, with the customer, the shock to me was the customer support data, seeing all those, we track every call that comes in, and our member support team, I've never seen anything like this. The member had an issue with phone call, and if the member had an issue with this, they were trying to, like, oh my gosh, they were able to take a 7-minute call and summarize it for me, for the organization, and
Sure.
and in a 20-word summary, that to combine with the heat map, to your point, Danielle, that is really powerful data. Now you're seeing the patterns from 3 different sources. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and even before we had digital tools, I mean, there was things like that where, or not as digital as we are now, but I can say 30 years ago, I was working in call centers, and
Right.
it was for a consumer product, and it was typing in black and white, black backgrounds, green type.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
of us still remember that stuff.
I remember that.
Just take, there's a certain skill in trying to summarize what somebody's telling you, like you said, in a 7-minute call, and sometimes we could say, okay, we can put down what product. We kind of know, is this a compliment, a complaint, just a comment, or something else? And that was your basis. But then it's like, okay, we can kind of identify some new ones, and if we had if we had enough of those other responses, then we knew we had to add that in as something that we was like, okay, A, product development, we got to fix something, and B, or it could even be production, not even product development, but just production. There's a problem. All these batches of such and such a thing are having issues, so. But I think what you're showing is that this is advanced a lot in 30 years. God, I'm going to say that.
I will say, I was in doing industrial technical documentation for industrial products before this, and I got a call. I was doing the how-to manuals, and somebody called asking about the circuitry, electronics for the wiring for this product. And we didn't mention something pretty critical. And I thought, oh, well, that 240 volt, I think that's pretty important. And just having that feedback loop from one call, we were using dealers, and the dealers would call back and say, hey, that's great, you put that in the, I'm like, well, of course I put that in user guide, because some electrician called and said he didn't quite understand if this was how this wiring was set up. And again, it's got very technical, and I needed subject matter experts. But I just remember thinking, wow, I think we need to collect more of these calls. Like, this guy just randomly called, and you're right about that. If the fact you work in a call center, that data is really valuable, and it's helped me really prioritize, and focus on what content issues I should be focusing on to help the most number of users.
Yeah, that seems to be a trend in a lot of big corporations. Is you may have knowledge articles, or even just articles up. They could be just news articles and say, was this helpful in giving rating systems? It's kind of crazy, and sometimes you're like, oh, really? And then there's other ones that you're like, ooh, okay, what did we do wrong here? We thought we covered all our bases here. So yeah,
very, very interesting. Well, again, just feel free to ping me anytime, and reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have to. But I really, really appreciate everybody sort of staying with me for the whole 50 minutes. And if there's anything else, any other questions I have, please just reach out to me. Let me know.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Well, again, Rob, we appreciate.
Thank
you
you.
got a clap from
Thanks.
Lori there.
Appreciate that.
We really appreciate Steve. Thanks, Rob. Very interesting presentation. So again, we want to thank everybody for coming, and our recording will be up on our website probably in the next couple of days. So just check out in the past events, and you'll see this listed there. And again, we appreciate you coming, and we wish you have a good rest of your night. Thanks a lot.